Courage and honor, cousin.
Into the fires of battle, unto the anvil of war.
Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I'm Zekthar,
And I'm Yuxin.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we'll be discussing the elite of the elite, those guys in gold, the Adeptus Custodes.
That's right, Zekthar, and this week we will be looking into their origins, along with some history of the bodyguards of the Emperor.
Right you are, Yuxin. But before we get into this, don't forget, folks, that we will be dropping the final part of a 3-part event on Bilko's Brigade, live on June 23rd, where our strange crew reaches the Octarius Prime, called Get the Get.
Quite right, Zekthar, and like we predicted, the audio was significantly better on the last one. Yet, there were some glitches that we were able to rectify midstream that shouldn't be a problem this upcoming time. And lastly, if you want to support this channel and find an awesome new fantasy read, go ahead and pick up my brother's book, The Yodanites. Just click on the hyperlink or type in the title in the description wherever you get your books. I can't wait to get my hands on the paperback when it comes out.
Well, thank you. Before we get to the origins of the Custodes, we have a question from Nathan T. that has a little to do about our subject today, as well as last month's topic, the word bearers.
Oh? Well, what's his question?
Well, Nathan's question was, is it mentioned how the word bearers took down the 5 Custodes? I know Lorgar had numbers, but it's still 5 Custodes, and they could have easily gotten word out of the treachery before all of them fell. So, a little background for those of you who didn't listen to our word bearers program.
So, as you know, Yuxin, anyways, the Custodes, there were 5 Custodes that got attached to the word bearers after the rising of Monarchia. I believe that was the city's name, correct?
Raising, you mean?
Or raising of Monarchia. Yes.
The rising of Monarchia. No.
Well,
Raising.
it rose into the air like ash. But, yes. And the Emperor left these 5 Custodes to follow around the word bearers and make sure that they were keeping on track with what they were supposed to be doing. So I don't know what they were paying attention to, because during that time, for the next 40 years, they followed the word bearers. And during that time, while they were supposedly keeping track of them, Lorgar went on a pilgrimage into the warp in the Eye of Terror. He became addicted to chaos. He convinced the rest of his legion to join chaos and eventually be turned heretical.
Oh, and let's not forget that instead of spreading the word of the Emperor, they were spreading the word of chaos to each of these planets that they...
Right to all you.
Were they asleep?
I don't know.
I
don't know. I did not read the book. There are a couple of books, anyways, that actually are based around this. One is called Betrayer, and the other one is called The First Heretic, both done by Aaron Dembski. But what he's talking about, like we were just saying anyways, how did these 5 Custodes, how do they end up killing these 5 Custodes? And their demise is, like I said, written by Aaron Dembski Bowden in his scribings of The First Heretic. And so it is said.
Neuralis's blade had hewn the gull of Vorbak's head clean from his shoulders, but Malnor did not fall. The wraithly image of his helm remained, snarling and shouting in silence. Neuralis, a blade master beyond anything Argotol had ever seen, had been forced to carve Malnor to pieces to put the warrior down for good. The fight was too frantic for sanity to have any place in its motions. Thoughts and formality vanished, replaced by training and instinct. A blur of blades and claws. The crack of ceramite, the grunts of pain. The smells of spit, of acid, of sweat, of parchment, of bone, of panic, of confidence, of smoke bolter muzzles, of charged blades, of tear salt, of breath, of blood, and blood, and blood. And then the first kill. Neuralis, the blade master, he killed Malnor, and that left him vulnerable. Torgal and Sakaar had leapt onto the custodian's back. Chop, chop, chop went the hacking blades, biting into armor joints at the back of the neck and the base of the spine. A life for life. Neuralius fell. Torgal leaped away to safety. Sakaar stayed to feed, and earned death himself. Aquilian, the Oculi Imperator. He avenged his brother's slaughter by ending Sakaar a heartbeat later with clean, bright sweeps of his sword. Argyle was on him in that moment. He remembered the leap and the soreness in his throat as he roared once more. He remembered the juicy, meaty crunch as the custodian's helmet ripped free of its neck. Like a flopping serpent, Aquilian's spine hung down from the dripping helm. A dizzying stench of blood, a maddening laugh that may or may not have been Argyle at all. He never knew for certain. 6 of the Gal Vorbak still drew breath. 6 possessed warriors gave their desert dog cackles and ran for the last custode with demonic vigor burning in their limbs. And this was the last moment Argyle could ever recall, until the air was cold again and it was all over. Synthrin pulled his helm free and faced them bareheaded. Instead of waiting with halberd in hand, he hurled it as a spear. The Gal Vorbak scattered, but it still struck home. One of them took the blade in the chest with a crack like a falling tree. The spear punched through ceramite, bone, and meat, with enough force to burst from the word-bearer's back. The Astartes flipped over with the impact, his chest cavity stripped hollow, his lungs and 2 hearts blasted out of him, reduced to pulp meat on the ground. Synthrin smiled as the other 5 descended upon him. He considered his vow of silence complete, given the circumstances, and he laughed at the warrior he'd killed.
How much have you, Seven?
Well, before we get into the Custodes, what do you think of this sad tale?
First off, it took, let's see.
Hang on a second, real quick here anyway. So to answer your question, Nathan, the Gal Vorbak killed the Custodes.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So it took 6 of them to take down 3 that are mentioned, right?
No.
No.
If I recall right. I mean, I think the grand
7.
total actually was there was for the 5 Custodes, it took 11 Gal Vorbak to do it. So almost 2 to 1.
And in this case, there was 7 though in this particular story, because
there
7
was 6
left after
3.
that one guy got killed. Yeah.
So technically, by the end of it, I think there were 5 left of the Gal Vorbak.
Yeah. So
What's your question?
not necessarily the ultimate fighters against everybody, suffice to say.
Well, okay. We did. Okay, so for those of you that missed it last week, anyways, we did talk about the Gal Vorbak. They were, they're pretty beefy dudes. I mean, the reason why they all kind of got killed was because they went up against something that you can't really kill, which is
a Primarch.
Corax. It's like going up against the Khan. It's just there's no good ending for that one, you know. And even still, anyways, he couldn't kill all of them. There were still a few of them that remained. So what happened to them, we don't know other than Argyle. But yeah, I mean, and not only that, but I mean, most people, anyways, would okay. So Custodes fans might be a little offended about this because they're just like, well, they're just possessed. The Custodes should be able to wipe the floor with them. The Gal Vorbak were, well, at least the first edition of them, so to speak, were significantly beefier than just your standard possessed.
Yeah.
It was like we talked about last week. It was more of a symbiotic relationship as opposed to a parasitic one. So it was like the strengths of both the Astartes and a demon combined that struck home. So it, quite frankly, anyways, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Let's put it that way. And we will get into, by the way, the Custodes are significantly better than Space Marines. I don't think anybody would argue that.
Yeah.
But what?
I don't think they're the ultimate, invincible fighters either. That's just
Well, okay, we'll put a pin in that. And
Yeah,
we will
we'll put a
talk about
pin in that. We'll just put it that way. We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah.
But
We will talk about that at the end of
Yes.
this box. But let's go ahead and get into where did the Custodes come from?
Well, the Legio Custodes are by many accounts the Emperor's true firstborn, prefiguring even the gene-crafted Thunder Warriors of the Unification Wars. They are his first genetically engineered, psycho-indoctrinated warriors, perfected weapons crafted by the Emperor's genius from the dread lore of the Dark Age of technology. They are in almost every measurable way superhuman, stronger, faster, more acute of senses, and more resilient than even the doomed Thunder Warriors, or the Space Marines who would follow them, and so far beyond the limits of an unaugmented human as to be almost godlike in comparison. Indeed, only the mightiest of foes may stand against them. Think ancient Terran Spartan warriors, the greatest combatants of their time. Then, give them modern steroids, workout equipment, and Damascus steel, and you kind of have an idea of who the Custodes are. They are rare creatures, these firstborn of the Emperor's gene craft. Such was their psychophysical design, and the intricacy and sophistication of the gene craft involved, that the modifications which went into their creation required such strict biological and psychological criteria that only a mere one in many thousands of potential candidates might prove suitable for the simplest of the steps involved in the Legio Custodes creation process. Even of this small pool of candidates, survival through the multiple solar decades of alchemical augmentation and psychomimetic training are far from guaranteed. In this fact can be seen a pattern also replicated in the Space Marine legions, only to a far greater degree. While the numbers of the Legiones Astartes were prevented from growing beyond perhaps 1 million at their greatest strength by the temporal and biological limitations inherent in the means of their creation, a paltry sum compared to the billions of others who took part in the Great Crusade, the Legio Custodes could never have operated on a scale as the Space Marine legions, even if the attempt had been made. As a result of the inherent difficulty of their creation, the number of active Legio Custode warriors never, it is believed, exceeded 10,000 warriors. This figure was first attained towards the middle stages of the Great Crusade, and maintained diligently enough that the 10,000 itself became a monogram for the Custodian Guard, in the works of the Remembrancers and the notaries of the Imperial Court. Certainly no more than 1,000 have ever been seen together at any one time, and then only once at the famous Battle of Gyros Thravian, fought during the Great Crusade against the Orc warlord Garkul Blackfang and his vast greenskin horde. The Primarchs Horus, Rogaldorn, and Mortarion and their legions were vastly outnumbered and close to defeat when the Emperor led an assault from his golden battle barge, the Bucephalus. At the head of 1,000 custodians, the Emperor struck at the very heart of the Orc horde, confronting Garkul atop the towering Gargant. As the Emperor decapitated the giant black-skinned Orc, the custodians laid waste to the warlord's prime warriors. It is said that within moments, over 100,000 greenskins died, and the Woog was broken. Legend has it that only 3 custodians fell at the battle, their names enshrined forever and engraved on the Emperor's armor thereafter. Now, it is not an uncommon belief to suppose the Custodian Guard were themselves some variant of Astartes, if so crude a term might be applied, an advanced form, perhaps even a second improved iteration. While this explanation might seem to fit the facts, particularly to those without intimate knowledge of the Imperium's birth pains during the final acts of the Unification Wars of Old Earth, it could not be farther from the truth. The bloody chronicles of the Unification Wars, particularly in the earliest stages when the Emperor first rose from the nightmarish bloodshed of Old Earth's long night in the late 29th millennium to cast down the reign of the warlords and monsters that had carved mankind's birth world into 1,000 slaughter-haunted pieces, are difficult now to comprehend. Many are rightly sealed from the Imperium's scholars, and even the Terran court, the dangerous truths within suppressed. But in those dark chronicles of the Custodian Guard, in some form or shape, have their part as far back as any can record, or those few souls who survived yet from those times can remember. Upon the pillars of the Black Manse of Nassau, capital of one of the earliest of the techno-barbarian holds to submit before he, who was later to be known as the Emperor, Inscriptions record the Lord of Lightning coming before their warlord, flanked by his 4 giants of crimson and gold, demanding surrender. So decades later, according to detailed extant records preserved in the Trans-Nordic Akashic archives, a companion guard of 30 custodians bearing guardian spears, clad in augment armor and personally commanded by the Emperor, fought at the head of the newborn Thunder Legion in the assault against the formidable Malon Sen Confederacy. One of their number is even recorded as being responsible for striking the head of the Confederation's tyrant prophet from its shoulders in the aftermath of the campaign's climactic Battle of the Red Frost. Yet, not all the Custodes' history is light and glory. Sometimes they are sent to do the Emperor's dirty work, and while it is normally expunged from Imperial records, if one looks close enough, they can find the cracks even in the Custodes' golden armor. A few decades after the Battle of the Red Frost, the Emperor took most of Terra under his iron rule, and with his conquest done, he would take to the stars on his great crusade with his new army of Astartes. There would be no room in this new army for many of his old soldiers, in particular his mighty Thunder Warriors, and so the Emperor ordered the Custodian Guard to lead the culling of his loyal Thunder Warriors after they had won the final battle for a unified Terra, known as the Battle of Mount Ararat. Regardless of any misdeeds or darker side of their history, there is one irrefutable fact. Since before the first worlds were conquered, as the Great Crusade left the Sol System, before the taking of Luna and the Treaty of Olympus Mons, since before the Cataclysm of Ursh and the fall of the Indonesic Bloc, before the Space Marines and before the Thunder Warriors, the Custodian Guard have walked at the Emperor's side, watching his back and making his plans become reality.
Well, we're going to skip a bit further ahead when the Custodians took part in the Horus Heresy. Now, some of the things they did we have mentioned before, and will not today due to time constraints. The first would be, we already talked about, their massacre at Isfahan 5, and their impact in the burning of Prospero, which you can hear on either our Vox on Lehman Rest and my brother's bonus Vox, The Burning of Prospero. Now, while they pop up occasionally in the Horus Heresy, normally in squad form, such as their time on Cygnus Prime with Sanguinius, there are 3 different points that we can point to where they are very important to the heresy, and some might say even bend fate. The first is the Siege of Chthoniya. Now, just quick reference, Chthoniya is where Horus came from.
Right. I was just about to say, I'm pretty sure that's where Horus came from. Colorado was a mining world, right?
I assume so, since Magos were found there during this particular rebellion, probably future ones. So I'd assume it'd be some sort of mining world.
Right. Didn't mean to interrupt. What happened with the Siege of Chthoniya?
Okay, now the first Siege of Chthoniya took place when Horus rose in rebellion in 005.M31. His legion's homeworld, Chthoniya, was left rather isolated within Imperial space. Even though the sons of Horus Primarch had prepared his rebellion for years, he invested little energy in reinforcing or fortifying Chthoniya. Evidently, he regarded the planet as unimportant to his wider military efforts. Accordingly, only 2 Sons of Horus chapters and 1 Word-Bearers company were stationed on the planet, left alone to face the Loyalists' wrath. Despite Chthoniya's small garrison, the Imperium could not afford to leave Chthoniya be, as it could possibly act as a traitor forward base for strikes into the nearby Sol system. Rogel Dorn consequently assembled a strong force to capture Horus's homeworld, consisting of the Imperial Fist's 9th and 14th battalions, the Space Wolves' 13th Great Company, 3 Adeptus Custodes Sodalities.
What's Sodality?
They're kind of like squads, the best we can tell.
Okay, so they're kind of like a shield guard.
They're
the old term for shield guard.
Bands of warriors is their definition of them.
Okay, so they're
I
an
would
old
assume
term
they're
for
about
the
squad form.
so the modern term I believe for the custodes is a shield guard, correct?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I think
Okay.
technically they're separate because
Oh,
of
you keep going. I'll look into it.
Okay.
All right, go for it.
And Mechanicum Tagmata. Led by Lord Castellan Evander Garius, the contingent invaded in 006.M31, beginning the first siege of Chthonia. Vastly outmatched, the traitors did not contest the invasion force in the void around Chthonia, allowing Imperials to land unopposed. Instead, the traitor garrison focused on defending Chthonia's main settlement, the Hive Lupercal's Gate, as well as the terminal Atlas. First blood was spilled when the Loyalist vanguard, consisting of the 13th Great Company, overran the Sons of Horus defending the other areas of Lupercal's Gate. They were followed by the Imperial Fists, who had advanced into the vast spire of the capital settlement. Spearheaded by Garius and his 456th Company, the Loyalists broke through the main gateway and eventually into the former throne room of Primarch Horus. However, this attack was carried out with unwarranted speed due to Garius's eagerness to humble his former allies, costing the Imperial Fists much more troops as would have been necessary. The Sons of Horus, meanwhile, already fought a guerrilla campaign using the dense Hive City to cover their counterattacks as well their gradual retreat.
So what I found so far, anyways, you know what they're called now?
What?
Squads of custodes. So I will keep looking, but this is apparently, anyways, from the
So
chronicles.
5 to 10 each.
About 5-10 each. Yeah. So and
15 to
in your
30.
giant siege here, anyways, there's about 30 of them, which kind of impressive. Yeah.
15 to 30.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Eventually, the Loyalists realized the traitors were not focused on holding Lupercal's Gate, but sabotaging key systems to render the planet's industry, infrastructure, and orbital defenses useless for the Imperium. Though Garius's forces hurried to stop the saboteurs, the traitors successfully crippled many systems and eventually retreated into Chthonia's underground caverns, from where they could continue their resistance. Overall, the first siege was a rather hollow victory for the Imperium, and Dorn was upset at the unnecessary losses and failure of this battle. A number of Sons of Horus commanders were captured in the first siege. They were subsequently brought to Terra and publicly executed.
Well, okay, I've done a little bit more digging into this, and so how do you say it? Sodalities?
Sodalities?
Sodalities. Yep, that one. It sounds like, anyways, that they're actually, so shield companies are a particular type of force that is within the soda guys. So
Soda guys.
yeah, well, I'm just gonna go with that. I can't say it right now.
Sodalities?
So they were traditionally known as sodalites. And now, anyways, they're known as, so now, anyways, it seems like they're known as shield companies. So it's actually bigger than a shield host, though. A shield host, anyways, it takes up the shield companies. So actually, instead of like 30 guys, you're probably looking more like 300. Which, that's kind of, there were a lot of them there. But here's what did they do? Well, they were there, I guess.
Well,
that's discussion.
They fought against the Sons of Horus, obviously. On the
Are there any chronicling of their like greatness during that time, or
nope?
Oh.
Anyways, the next would be the Xandian incident, dated in 012.M31, when the Thousand Suns launched an invasion on the imperial world of Exandria 4.
Pardon me. I'm not actually familiar of the Exandrian incident. You mind expanding on what happened there?
Not at all. You see, Exandria 4 was once part of the Thousand Sons Prosperan realm before the Imperium declared the Legion to be traitors. In the aftermath of the burning of Prospero, some of the Thousand Sons' forbidden knowledge was rescued and stored on data cores that were taken to Exandria 4. They were then secured in the world's single Great Pyramid structure. Exandria 4 was also heavily fortified and garrisoned by the Imperial Fists and elements of the Legio Custodes. Despite this, when the Thousand Sons struck, their psychic auguries allowed them to bypass the world's outer defense and teleport directly into its pyramid. A savage fight then erupted, as the elite Scarab Occult Terminators led the attack against the Imperial Fists and Custodians. As they clashed amid the pyramid's dark corridors and library vaults, the Thousand Sons sorcerers also let loose their psychic powers, then unleashed such an onslaught that the Loyalists were forced to retreat to Exandria 4's surface. Before a counterattack could be launched, however, the Thousand Sons teleported back to their fleet and escaped. The traitors had achieved their goal, though, of retrieving the pyramid's data cores that contained their forbidden knowledge. But the most important thing the Custodes did was help the Emperor in the war within the webway. Now, as we mentioned when we discussed the Horus heresy, Magnus attempted to warn the Emperor of Horus's treachery through psychic means, which, as you folks probably know, turned out to destroy everything. His psychic warning breached the wards the Emperor had placed around the Imperial Palace, causing the Golden Throne, device intended to allow human travel within the webway, to malfunction. As the Golden Throne broke down, the webway portal deep within the Imperial Palace became breached. Floods of demons rushed through this breach, and the Emperor dispatched the Custodes and Sisters of Silence to hold the line and prevent Terra from being overrun. As the Custodes and Silent Sisterhood fought back immense demonic hordes, the Emperor sat upon the Golden Throne in a desperate attempt to stabilize the webway portal. Even the Emperor's psychic might was tested in this endeavor, and he became visibly exerted. The war within the webway consumed the Emperor's attention, leaving the waging of the simultaneous defense against the Horus heresy to Malcador, Rogel Dorn, and Constantine Valdor. Malcador was the only one allowed to regularly visit the Emperor.
Pardon the interruption here. I got a question for you. So, as we have talked about many times before, the Sisters of Silence are all blanks, correct?
Yes.
How do they step into the warp?
No clue.
How does that work? I was just thinking about this. I've heard the story anyways of the War of the Webway, and the Sisters of Silence are very poignant in this. They really do help the Custodes out. But I've always kind of wondered, how do they get into the warp? I mean, technically they're in the Webway, yes?
Yes, which is not tainted by the warp.
Okay. So maybe they don't actually go into the warp. They've found a way anyways to bypass the warp through the portal of the Golden Throne.
I assume that
what I'm hearing?
The breach was kind of like the Golden Throne was supposed to create this connection with the webway, and that connection has been partially broken, and the warp's going through that. Is my understanding of what's basically happening.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, if this had all worked out the way it was supposed to, then the Golden Throne was supposed to enact anyways a way to get into the webway without breaching the warp. Correct?
Right.
The Magnus shows up.
And destroys that perfect connection.
And it causes a breach in the webway, which all the demons start rushing through, correct? That's what happens here? Okay. So my question is that why didn't they just duct tape Sisters of Silence to the breach? I guess. I know that's a weird way of saying it, but you understand what I'm saying, right? I mean, why did they just kind of smack them up there anyway, so that the warp couldn't get through because they're blanks, right? I mean, the warp does not attribute to it.
Maybe the hole was too big.
Just not work that way. So I just got this middle image of the Emperor just grabbing a whole bunch of these sisters and just like hooking them at this hole. Stick! Sorry.
If it would work, he probably would have done it. That's the thing. If it would have worked, I'm pretty sure he would have done it. I'm
right.
Not kidding. That I would have no
pretty
doubt.
Much sounds like the Emperor. Yeah. We're gonna duct tape you to the side of this webway
until we can figure out a difference, or maybe not.
Did you say something about? Oh no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, okay.
I assume it was probably like too big of a hole for them to actually affect it.
I mean, he had bloodthirsters and whatnot running through it. I just never understood it. Okay, so but you did actually answer my question, anyways. Is the Sisters of Silence fought in the webway? They didn't actually fight in the warp. So, but I mean, that's still kind of a question, anyways. That for you guys listening, if you've got an answer to it, if you threw a Sister of Silence into the warp, what would happen? It's kind of an interesting thought process. But sorry, go ahead.
She'd probably just float. Actually, she'd probably suffocate because it's still space.
It's still space. Okay, well, you put him in an astronaut suit. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, sorry. We're good. Go ahead. How do they fix this?
They don't. But that's the easiest way to put it.
They really did. I mean, the warp didn't take over Terra, so they did duct tape it. They used a lot of duct tape. Sorry, go ahead. I'll keep my mouth shut.
I just find it funny how that'd be with Malkador visiting. How's it going? Well, I'm still trying to fix this freaking thing. Okay. Want to hear my end? Not really. I'm going to have to tell you anyways. Fine.
The door open, peeks open, and he goes, how's it going in there? And he goes, I want your soul. Just as good as last time. Okay, bye. Yeah. Shuts the door. Okay.
Soon enough, the war within the webway fell into a pattern. The custodians established a series of blockades across the tunnels within the webway. Behind these defended areas, the Mechanicum workers were repairing the damaged sections of the tunnel and sealing the rifts to prevent more demons from getting inside the webway. See? That's their fix. We'll have the Mechanicum,
duct tape,
the Mechanicum, mind you,
to the wall. Sorry. Start reading that. So they did use the Sisters of Silence. Okay.
In front of the blockades, the custodians and the sisters launched lightning-fast counterattacks to keep the demonic hordes off balance and prevent them from massing in strength. Slowly but surely, the Imperial forces were pushing the blockades forward as the pressure from the demonic attacks waned. Nevertheless, some demon assaults did manage to break through the Imperial defenses, and on those rare occasions, the attackers wreaked havoc on the Imperial workers. More than once, the demonic entities were able to fight their way to the warp gate of the Golden Throne. Desperate fighting ensued as the custodians and sisters doubled their efforts to throw back the demons and prevent them surging through the warp gate and into the Imperial dungeon beyond. As the war raged on, new troops appeared amongst the hordes of demons attacking the Imperial forces. The powers of Chaos sent foully corrupted Chaos Space Marines, Titans, and other war machines into the webway to try and force a victory, which begs the question how fast they were actually closing these rents, right?
I mean, I'm assuming
it's coming close. We can fit a Titan in there. Okay, maybe not that close.
Remember, anyways, I mean, the Golden Throne, the webway portal project, anyways. I mean, the whole concept was is that they were eliminating the aspect of warp travel for their ships.
Right.
So, I mean, this tunnel had to be quite large. I mean, can you imagine trying to fit the phalanx through something like this? I mean, that's kind of how large it was. That was the aspect behind it. So, and yeah, to me, anyways, it's always going to take slower if you're going to conquer a space and then you have to rebuild behind you before you continue moving forwards.
Sorry
That's
about
kind of what they're
that.
doing. Very
We
similar.
made 2 steps. Hurry, get the stapler. No.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
We'll use it later. We just need to staple it.
apparently, anyways, Magnus did such a great job ripping the crap out of this thing that, I mean, it to me it makes a lot of sense, anyways. That this is very slow work. They were having to try to fix all this.
Shows you how powerful Magnus was, though, for him to be able to do that much damage.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Magnus is very powerful. To me, it's more of like a trickle effect. It's like if you take, like, in Terran 42, if you take, like, a truck engine and you take one of the bolts off that secures the engine to the frame and you drive for a while and then it slips off of there. Yes, that bolt's very powerful, but it's still just the bolt that started the chain of events. That, to me, anyways, this has always kind of been the way that it worked with Magnus. It wasn't like he went in there and just like, threw like a circus a bit. It's like, to produce what he had to say, he just wanted to get through all these different shields. And to do that, it took all this,
and vaporizing many psychers' brains, and it was still a pretty powerful move.
Doing that. And by the time he got there, anyways, I mean, it wasn't just him, anyways, showing up. It was like he was literally breaking all the stuff. So, like, taking that Terran 42 truck concept, if you take like a auger drill bit that is, like a 1/4 inch, it's still a decent sized drill, and you drill right through the middle of the engine. That's kind of what Magnus did. So, yeah. Small things can hurt big things.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
Mighty greater demons, including bloodthirsters, joined the battle as well. The sanctity of the imperial palace, the fate of the Imperium, and the very life of the emperor depended on the custodian god and the Sisters of Silence. If they couldn't defeat the demonic horde and its corrupted allies, then humanity was surely doomed. The war within the webway was waged for the next 5 years. Imperial forces were centered around the abandoned Eldar city of Kalistar, known as the Impossible City, defending the webway tunnels constructed by the Mechanicum and held together by the Emperor upon the Golden Throne. The Custodes were reduced by 90%, and the Sisters suffered greatly as well. 2 of the 3 commanding Custode tribunes were killed, leaving Ra and Dominion as the primary Imperial officer. The Impossible City itself soon came under threat as a formidable new foe, Dracnian, appeared among the demonic hordes. Faced with this, the Custodes, Diocletian Koros, was charged with securing reinforcements from Terra. Due to the secrecy of the project, the scarce resources available because of the ongoing heresy, the maddening effect of chaos, and the questionable loyalty of the legions of Astartes, only the doomed prisoners of House Viridian, the crippled blood angel Dominion Zephon, and Mechanicum servitors and Skitari were provided. The Mechanicum Dominus, known as the Archimandrite, was charged with leading them in the final defense of Kalistar. Meanwhile, the Emperor charged the Sisters of Silence with unspoken sanction, and the Black Ships worked at a hurried pace to gather psychers across the galaxy. In the siege of Kalistar, the Custodes-led forces held back countless chaotic hordes, but the walls of the city were shattered by warhound titans and Legio Audax. Brutal fighting for Kalistar raged for weeks on end, the Custodes and Sisters not having a moment's rest. As demonic traitor legionnaire and chaos titan hordes swarmed into Kalistar, the Archimandrite ordered a general retreat of her forces. They intended to abandon the Custodes and Sisters and instead secure the webway route to Mars and reclaim their sacred homeland. This desperate treachery did not save the Archimandrite, who was possessed by Dracnian, gigantic mechanical form being used to attack the retreating Imperials. Kalistar fell, and the Chaos forces drove the Imperials all the way back to the webway gate, leading to Terra itself. It was at this moment that the unspoken sanction was completed on Terra. 1,000 captured Psykers were sacrificed to power the Golden Throne without the Emperor. Free from his prison for a single day, he plunged into the webway and appeared as a burning dawn before the Chaos hordes. The Emperor blazed with a golden psychic fire that he channeled into the very structure of the webway. And the Emperor plunged into the demons' ranks, reaping a terrible toll wherever he fought. The exhausted Custodes were reinvigorated by their master, fighting by their side. The Emperor summoned an army of loyal Imperial dead, including Ferrus Manus, that took the form of blazing avatars to fight the demons. Dracnian itself soon appeared, proclaiming itself the Emperor's end. However, the Master of Mankind was able to seal him into Custodian, Ra, and Dimnian, who was then ordered to run into the depths of the webway. The Emperor's actions gave the surviving Imperials enough time to evacuate the webway. And as Chaos forces closed on the portal once more, the Master of Mankind mounted the Golden Throne and sealed the gate. The gate would remain closed to the demons for as long as the Emperor was able to power it from his throne atop the Golden Portal. Only the mightiest of Psykers had power enough to do this, and even then most would be exhausted and die in a short time. Only the Emperor had the might to keep the gate closed permanently, and for him the effort got harder as the demonic forces gathered about him. For as long as the demonic horde threatened to breach the portal, the Golden Throne would be his prison. In the last stage of the siege of Terra in 014.M31, such a breach became increasingly likely as Magnus used his powers to assail the gate. In a desperate gamble, the Emperor and Malkador temporarily opened the webway gate to allow Vulcan to enter, while Custodes and Sisters of Silence held back the demonic hordes. The operation succeeded as Vulcan was able to traverse the webway, eventually discovering Magnus in the ruins of Kalistar. There, the two Primarchs battled for timeless eons, with Vulcan dying and reviving countless times before finally defeating and banishing his brother. Despite his terrible wounds and nearly destroyed mind, Vulcan also managed to return to the Imperial Palace after the duel. When the Emperor decided to confront Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit, Malkador was left to maintain the Golden Throne and keep the portal closed in his place. After the injured body of the Emperor was brought back to the Golden Throne, the immense effort exerted by Malkador in keeping the portal shut had reduced him to mere dust. As the Emperor was placed back on his Golden Throne, his body has allowed the portal to remain closed for the last 10,000 years. Should the Emperor die, the Imperial Palace would be breached and Terra itself would be overrun by demons. Now, before we carry on, what do you think of the war within the webway?
Well,
Other than the Emperor was a dick.
Oh, that one guy.
By the way, a while back, Hermes Skirty asked us a question concerning the Emperor demon possessing somebody. And he said his friend. Well, apparently, actually, he did. It was this person, and then he told him just run down the hall. Obviously, not a friend.
Also, Hermes, if this is what you're referring to, anyways, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Also, real quick, anyways, Draknir, or is it Draknir? That's
No,
his name.
Draknir is I think some sort of
Draknian.
mythological being.
Draknian is also. Remember how he's saying that sounds like it's the name of the sword that Abaddon wields now? It is, in fact, the same thing.
Ah,
So the thing that the Emperor had to spend time to stop is the same thing that Abaddon wields now.
so he went from being a demon that possessed a mechanicus to possessing a custode to being now turned into a sword.
well, it is said that Draknian can take many forms, and it only appears as a great blade in the hands of Abaddon because that is how the War Master of Chaos chooses it to be. In truth, the sword has no real shape or size, at least nothing that could be understood by the mind of man. So it's still a demon. It's just, yeah. It's kind of scary, though, if you think about it. It's the thing, anyway, that stopped the Emperor for a time, and he uses it like a toothpick. If he can unlock the potential of that, he could rule the universe. But I don't know. But getting back to the webway and just the custodes into themselves, anyways, at this point, I think it is generally overlooked a lot how much they did in the Horus Heresy because all they did, anyways, was the war in the webway, and no one talked about it. So, I mean, if they hadn't been there, then yeah, humanity would have died. I mean, Horus wouldn't even had to have laid siege to Terra. All the demons would have just popped out right in the middle of the palace, and that would have sucked for everybody. So, yeah. Like him or hate him, I'm not a particular big fan of the Custodes. You got to at least give them props for this. I mean, they saved humanity here.
Them and the Sisterhood.
Them and the Sisters of Silence. I mean, just as much as Dorn did protecting Terra, as much as Gilliman did showing up at the very end, to make sure that chaos scattered. I mean, they all, anyways, had their part to play, and the Custodes did theirs as well as they can. And ironically, anyways, the Custodes always thought of this, anyways, as their worst moment in history. I always kind of figured, anyways, as their greatest moment because it's quite frankly where they mattered most. They didn't bend and they didn't break. Right. They held the line. I mean, one of the things that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes is the aspect that the Custodes think of themselves as, especially the Custodes themselves think of themselves as great warriors, not soldiers, warriors. And there's a difference between the two, and we'll discuss that later. But me personally, I've always been, anyways, under the concept that times are changed by soldiers, not warriors. You can have a great bard tell great songs of warriors. They won't tell great songs of soldiers. They'll take great songs of warriors. But at the end of the day, anyways, the warrior gets that song and the soldier gets everything else.
Right.
They're far more important, in my opinion. But like I said, anyways, this is one of the few times, anyways, where they held the line. They became very soldierly during this time. And for that, anyways, they definitely deserve the props.
Yeah.
What do you think at this point?
I do think that when it came to the war within the webway, yeah, they did step up.
They do remind me actually a lot here, anyways. And we talked about this briefly, but Terran 42. Some of you might remember, anyways, the Iliad, written by Homer. And and it talks about a bunch of mighty heroes on the Greek sides. And one of my particular favorites was Ajax the Greater. And he hung out with a dude named Ajax the Lesser. And he wasn't like he was a worse warrior. It was just he was significantly smaller than Ajax the Greater. Ajax the Greater was a beast of a man. His shield was 10 ox hides thick. So, I mean, he's talking about hefting around like a 50-pound shield.
So kind
And
of like a Goliath, basically.
very much like a Goliath, very much like a custode. And then behind him, anyways, came Ajax the Lesser, and Ajax the Lesser was the greatest bowman in the Greek warriors. So what he would do is as Ajax the Greater was marching his way up the beach and slaughtering any Trojans that were in front of him, Ajax the Minor was like watching his back and hiding behind his shield and shooting anything that came close. So they had a very symbiotic and a very great relationship that worked really, really well. And to me, anyways, quite frankly, anyways, the best way that you see that, and I'm using this as for instance, because if you look at the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes, here anyways, you see them working together in that kind of unison, and they do a great job. And it's the only reason humanity is what it is today.
Right.
So, like I say, anyways, you have to thank Custodes. You also kind of have to thank the Sisters of Silence too. So, but this.
We will talk about them in the future.
We originally were going to actually do what what is normally done, anyways, is that when you talk about the Custodes, we'll do an episode about the Sisters of Silence. But we looked and we realized there's so much stuff on the Sisters of Silence. We'll probably have to actually take a whole month talking about it. But like I said, that's kind of the way, anyways, I kind of look at this event in history, and this should be, quite frankly, anyways, for the Custodes, the most shining moment of their history. But the way that they look at it is that it is the worst because of what you mentioned at the end of there, anyways. The Emperor does fall at the end. He gets
a little bit
shoved into the golden throne.
A little taken away too, because it's like, we've been fighting forever. It's like, and Magnus is coming. Oh crap! What are we gonna do? You don't have to do anything. We'll send Vulcan. It's like, but our job.
There were another couple key points, but for 5 years they held the line.
Yeah,
5 years. But like I said, anyways, the reason why they call it a tragedy is because the Emperor fell. Sorry, what's that?
When we were talking about this before we did this recording, I just had this mental image of, since it's like 5 years, it'd be like, okay, you guys are in for about a week or two, then we switch out. Okay.
But after the death of Horus and Gilliman taking over the Imperium, the Custodes don't do a whole lot for the next 10,000 years.
Yeah, about that. I always wondered why they only remain on Terra. I mean, I understand they're wanting to guard the Emperor, but it's not like he's going anywhere. Why wouldn't you muster the Custodes from time to time?
Well, you can thank Gilliman for that.
Huh?
Yeah. What, you just thought he mucked with the legions in the Astra Militarum?
Well, no. I just never thought that he did anything with the Custodes.
Well, before Constantine Valdor disappeared.
More about that next week.
The Edict of Restraint was proclaimed by Lord Commander Rabute Gilliman in cooperation with Constantine. And this edict ties the Custodes to Terra and forbids them from leaving the planet in force. Though the Custodes did leave the Sol system in small numbers under specific circumstances several times, which I will get to here in a few minutes, they would not go to war in force for the next 10,000 years. However, in the closing days of the 13th Black Crusade, many within the Imperium, such as the Chancellor of the Senatorium Imperialis, Lev Tyrion, saw the Custodes as the only hope for the Imperium and wished to have the High Lords of Terra repeal the edict. Since the forming of the Great Rift and the return of Gilliman, the edict has since been dissolved, and the Custodes now go to war again, which you will be talking about after I give a brief report on what happened between the Great Scouring and the Great Rift.
Well, it doesn't sound like much if they were stuck with the Emperor. The only thing I can think of is they're dealing with the wives of the Emperor, aka literally Sisters of Battle, during the Age of Apostasy, and that time with the War of the Beast, right?
Right, you are used to. And if you folks want to hear about that, you can listen to my Vox, The Age of Apostasy, or The War of the Beast Part 1 and Part 2. I can't remember which, I honestly can't remember anyways which part they're in, but they're in there somewhere. But moving past that, they kept a role more of emissaries than warriors.
Like, take in 999.M37 during Abaddon the Despoiler's 8th Black Crusade. A combined force of Night Lords and Iron Warriors captured the Andromache system, and a direct threat to Terra is identified. Initially, the notoriously insular fabricator general Uxat of Maz refused to pledge his aid in eliminating the heretic Astartes. However, when a diplomatic mission from the Adeptus Custodes attends his forge world in person, the fabricator general's ego was stroked and his mind swayed. Mere solar months later, a combined force of Minotaurs, Adeptus Mechanicus, War Maniples, and Custodians from the Dread Host annihilate the traitors and their captured strongholds. Now, they did rise up during a time when Terra herself was threatened.
Well, of course.
One such instance was the Siege of the Eternity Gates. You see, what happened was the cult of the Hedonic Lord seized control of much of the Eternity Gate spaceport on Terra and the Outer Palace complex. Repeated attempts were made by the Adeptus Arbites to break the heretic barricades, but every attack was hurled back by tides of fanatics. Meanwhile, word escapes the spaceport that the cultists are repurposing hundreds of heavy landers and atmospheric barges for an all-out attack upon the Imperial Palace. Identifying the cult activity as now posing a direct threat to the Emperor's safety, a shield host of the Adeptus Custodes launched a blistering attack. Land raiders and venerable contemptor dreadnoughts smashed through the cult's barricades, even as sleek squadrons of Virtus Praetors strike at the heretics from above. Bands of custodians tear through the chaos cultists with merciless efficiency, driving their victims before them and trapping them in macro hangar level 142. There, the cult of the Hedonic Lord were slaughtered to the last, and their deviant dreams of an attack upon the Golden Throne ground to dust. But before we get to more recent times, we have to tell the tale of Lieutenant Nathasian.
Who? That doesn't sound like a custode.
Oh, well, he wasn't.
Huh?
Let me explain. Okay, you remember when we covered the Ostra Militarum and how I kept getting more and more pissed off about humanity's tactics because they were just simply out of date and they just wasted lives needlessly?
Yeah. I remember a couple of times when you turned purple. You were so enraged.
Yes, well, Lieutenant Nathasian of the Cadian 86th Regiment was under the same thoughts and started giving orders to his regiment that were not of the old ways.
Oh no. I can only guess what the commissariat thought of these new ideas.
Yep, you are spot on, Euxin. Seeing these new controversial acts as insubordination, Lieutenant Nathasian of the Cadian 86th Regiment was slated for execution. Yet he was spared when a band of grim-faced custodians from the Aquilan shield appeared at his side in a blaze of golden light and wordlessly cut down his would-be commissariat executioners. With his remarkable bodyguards at his side, Nathasian is free to exercise his flair for unconventional tactics, which soon sees his promotion to Commander Army Group. The Shuddering Stars are swept clear of the Orc tribes, stopping Dogskrag in its tracks before it can descend upon the Sol System.
Wow, so let me get this straight. He's allowed to use new tactics, and not only do they work, raise him to the ranks of the Astra Militarum, but they eliminate an Orc. Whoa!
Yep.
How have I not heard of this guy? Why don't we get the Nathasian reforms?
Well, in the wake of Nathasian's triumph over the Greenskins, his bodyguards departed as suddenly as they arrived, and, never ones to rescind a sentence, the commissariat sees War Master Nathasian dead before the solar day is out.
You're kidding.
I wish I was. I hate the Imperium sometimes. The Ostra Militarum in particularly, the commissariat. I know a lot of people like the commissariat. There are a few of them that I like for instance, Cyphus Cain, the hero of the Imperium. Gaunt's okay in my book. I can't stand the other guy, probably the third most famous commissar, the old Baelai, who's just an obnoxious guy, old cranky fart. But this just takes the cake anyways. He actually literally conquers an entire galaxy for you. And just because of protocol and paperwork, you shoot him in the face. Just dumb. Well, what do you think of these three events that took place?
Well, one thing is, I find it funny how they'll do these sort of things, but they didn't really do any sort of intervention when it came to Lord of the Beast. That's something that always is I've wondered about. But because I mean, having a huge gigantic attack moon right above the planet, I'm pretty sure that's a pretty close threat to Terra.
Well, they guarded
But,
the Golden Throne. Yeah, okay. In the War of the Beast, okay, so what you're referring to, I didn't actually talk about. But in the War of the Beast, if I recall right, the only thing they really did during the War of the Beast was a bunch of Eldari. There were
like 8 of them.
But they were Harlequins, right?
Yeah, Harlequins, and one of them was a Shadow Seer Harlequin.
Popped up in front of the door to the Golden Throne, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, because then the Custodes, without mercy, anyways, pretty much slaughtered all of them until one of them actually got him to stop. I don't even remember how that happened, but
well, they didn't pop up. They actually had to work their way to the doors, actually. But
to the Custodes, they popped up right in front of the doors, which wasn't a good idea. Probably something along the lines of "don't kill me." Probably, anyways, is the only thing that saved them. But one of them, I think, only one of them lived. I have information. Something along those lines. Right before she got punched in the face. But yeah, that one, anyways. The War of the Beast. I think there's been a few times, anyways, during that 10,000 years where Terra actually gets threatened, and the Custodes really don't do a whole lot. They just simply guard the Golden Throne.
It's like, I mean, dude, you have an entire orc planet infestation that may be dropping on Terra. You think that might be important to your Golden Throne there?
Well, maybe they just figured, anyways, that it wasn't important enough, anyways, for them to launch out. Like, Space Marines will get it, or somebody will get it. They're just orcs. Remember, we killed 100,000 of them. We only lost 3 guys. I mean, one of the things, anyways, that is kind of the downside of the Custodes is their hubris. I mean, don't get me wrong. They are, pardon my French, but badasses. But, I mean,
there's a healthy ego there.
There is very much a healthy ego there. I mean, part of it, I do think, anyways, is warranted. I mean, they are really, really good. But at the same time, it's just like the Primarchs we've talked about a lot of times. Their fall is their hubris. Even though it's well-deserved a lot of times, there's still that aspect. It's like, well, yes, but it doesn't mean you're immortal. So, yeah. But, yeah, like I said, they didn't do a whole lot during the 10,000 years between the Great Scouring and the Great Rift. But what do they do after the Great Rift pops up there, Yuxin?
With the surge of chaos activity across the galaxy in the wake of the Great Rift's birth, and the threat of eternal damnation more real than ever, the Adeptus Custodes have taken their vow of protection to its logical extreme. They'll see the destruction of those forces who pose a threat to the sanctity of Terra. First amongst these are the dread hordes of chaos. The best form of defense is attack. It is a maxim that has survived through the millennia, and with good reason. Of late, it has become the mantra of all Adeptus Custode commanders. In conjunction with the alpha-level astropaths and doomed scryers that dwell within the Imperial Palace, these officers launch terrifyingly effective strikes at those whom they deem a threat to the Emperor's works. More than one galactic tyrant, laying plans for a crusade that he envisages culminating on Terra itself, has found the warriors of the Emperor descending from the heavens to strike him down before he has even taken to his ships. You see, through all those thousands of years doing nothing on Terra, the Adeptus Custodes have long honed strategies and tactics in case they should be called upon to join the frontline fight for humanity's survival. The day of that remit has finally arrived. Yes?
I dare say, anyways, they haven't been doing nothing for thousands of years. They've been doing a very good job as emissaries and bodyguards and hanging out at the Golden Throne. Yeah. Oh, they put down a few riots to help the Arbites. The Arbites like them. But yeah.
Kinda.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The day of that remit has finally arrived. The resurrected Primarch Gilliman, restored to his ancient role as the Lord Commander of the Imperium and Imperial Regent, has met alone with his father, the Master of Mankind, and emerged with clear vision of humanity united in battle. Those custodian guard known as the Companions, the 300 warriors charged with the direct defense of the Emperor on the Golden Throne, remain by his side, just as the colossal edifice of his palace continues to be bolstered by a standing army of golden heroes. The rest have taken to the stalls. They have done so in no small force, for this majestic legion still numbers 10,000 blades and more. With the Sanctum Imperialis secure under the vigil of the Companions, the Crusaders are free to pursue the war of aggression they have long desired, putting into place war strategies perfected over the centuries through fractal thought exercises, cogitator-spawned algorithms, long study, and even simulated conflicts waged in hallucinariums.
You see? They've been training. That's what they've been doing the last 10,000 years. They've been training very hard.
Anyways, these give the custodians a tactical edge that allows them to counter the enemy's actions before they have begun. Most of these changes came thanks to Gilliman's return, which came not a moment too soon, for he had not been long at his labors when the cascading fury of the Great Rift washed over the Sol system. Though not directly struck by the warp storms, Terra bore the brunt of the empiric shock waves that temporarily extinguished the light of the Astronomicon during what became known as the Noctis Aeterna, and wrought havoc and misery from the planet's highest spires to its deepest crypts. The Adeptus Custodes found themselves putting down riots, doomsday cult uprisings, and rampaging packs of luckless petitioners driven to madness and cannibalism. Bands of custodian wardens stood their ground in the shadowed undervaults far beneath the Imperial Palace, as runic sigils burned out and timeless whores burst from their containment cells. Worse was to follow, seeking to strike the decapitating blow that would bring the Imperium to ruin. A vast horde of cornate demons tore through the skin of reality and assaulted the Lion's Gate of the palace, initiating what became known informally as the Second Battle of Terra. Legions of howling demons surged towards the Emperor's palace in a crimson tidal wave, and a frenzied battle ensued. The battleship-sized gun emplacements flanking the Lion's Gate blasted glowing craters into the diabolical horde, but alone they had no hope of prevailing. Led by Roberta Gilman and Captain General Trajan Valores, a combined host of Adeptus Custodes, Ultramarines, and Sisters of Silence, marched out to meet the demons before the walls of the Imperial Palace. In scenes that echoed the horror of the Siege of Terra 10 millennia before, the Golden Warriors of the Adeptus Custodes faced the Blood God's savage butchers blade to blade. This time, led by some of the Imperium's greatest champions and driven by a furious determination never to fail again, they prevailed. One by one, the 8 bloodthirsters that led the attack were blown apart or cut down. The cost in lives was great, with noble defenders who had stood guard over the Emperor for thousands of Terran years brought low by the brazen weapons of Khorne's hateful demons. Yet even as the skies boiled blood red and crimson rain slicked the ground, the blood legions of Khorne faded from reality with howls of frustration and rage. The Battle of Lion's Gate proved the stark truth. While great swaths of witnesses to the demonic incursion were corralled and executed by the Inquisition, of course, and efforts made to obliterate all evidence of the conflict, right? The masters of the Adeptus Custodes formally recognized that Terra's defense could no longer be guaranteed without greater proactive measures. The servants of the dark gods had bypassed the defenses of the cradle of humanity. Behind locked doors, complex wards, and layers of side protections, Trajan, Valoris, and Gilliman ratified a formal amendment to the role of the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperial Palace must still be guarded, of course, and the Companion's watch must continue within the Emperor's throne room. However, as a logical extension of the vows of duty they had sworn, the Adeptus Custodes committed to greatly extending their extrasolar activities.
So, like I said, they pretty much dissolved the Edicts of Restraint.
Yeah, the same thing that Gilliman created. Yeah.
Right. Well,
He comes back and is like, maybe it wasn't such a good idea. Yeah, maybe.
well, it's also that concept, anyways, of how you broke all the Legion Astartes apart. And I think at this point, anyways, he's probably thinking that wasn't the greatest ideas.
Or at least having it splintered
back together
that much. Or at least having it splintered that much. Maybe,
By the way, the Battle of Lion's Gate, there were, like you said, anyways, 8 bloodthirsters and 88 demonic cohorts. The casualty rate for that was actually really heavy. It was 2,000 custodes at the very least.
Wow.
2,000 of them died.
And that was with Gilliman and Sisters of Silence. So that
apparently some Imperial Fists and Grey Knights were there as well. We'll probably get into that anyways when you talk about what's his face? Trajan Valoris. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, just something I found interesting. I was just kind of looking at it. But sorry, go ahead.
You mean the ultimate fighters suffered? Sorry. Aided by oracular doomscryers and alpha level astropathic intercepts, and guided in part by the continued efforts of the Eyes of the Emperor, more Custodes shield hosts than ever before struck out from Terra. The aim of these forces was to exterminate utterly the most deadly threats to the Emperor himself. This mission might take them all across the galaxy, even into the shadows of the Imperium Nihilus, beyond the sprawl of the Great Rift to the Galactic North. But always their focus would be the sanctity of Terra. In this capacity, a number of shield companies attached themselves to Gilliman's Indomitus Crusade, reprising the role of the Emperor's emissaries in bearing Primaris Space Marine reinforcements and the Primaris creation technology to the beleaguered Space Marine chapters, and ensuring they understood that this was a gift from the Master of Mankind himself. It was not to be squandered or refused. Other shield companies relocated to permanently garrison the Sol System's outer defenses or traveled further afield in order to watch over the primary warp routes that remained stable paths to the throne world. Others still took even more esoteric mantles, becoming hunters after arch heretics, questers for artifacts crucial to the ongoing survival of the Imperium, or redoubling their efforts in their wars against humanity's hidden foes. Not since the Great Crusade had so many custodians bestrode the stars. It is tradition that when one of their number falls, Terra mourns, and the giant bell of lost souls is rung in memoriam. With the new era of war upon them, that sonorous toll has been heard more frequently than ever. They do not fall easily, however, for they have access to the finest weaponry, and the museum arsenals of the Imperial Palace are theirs to use as they see fit. Few post-Horse Heresy variations of tank, aircraft, or weapon systems are at their disposal, but they are perhaps stronger for it, Every weapon the Custodian Guard uses to wage war has earned its place 100 times over. Their armored support elements were perfected when the Imperium was still in its infancy, and they remain just as potent. The machine spirits more bellicose and powerful than any latter-day equivalent. The Adeptus Custodes employs squadrons of gold-hulled gunships. Some of these are the very same craft used during the Horus Heresy, painstakingly maintained and blessed each day with sacred oils and unguents. When a direct vector of invasion is called for, the Adeptus Custodes utilize Godstrike pattern teleportarium arrays, appearing in the midst of the fray in storms of golden light. Their starships have ancient translocation bays where blessed incense drifts in the chill air, each station permanently attended to by high-rank tech priests, and blessed to such a degree that even contender dreadnoughts can be teleported straight into battle. The warriors inside, their armor proof against the wrenching forces of this arcane technology, shake off their disorientation in a heartbeat before launching thunderous assaults their foes could not have seen coming. I believe this is where we get to the real propaganda.
Okay, how so?
This is where they boost up even more the persona of Adeptus Custodes. We'll go past just them being wonderful fighters, amazing fighters. The willpower and fortitude of the Adeptus Custodes is such that even the most fiendish sorcerers find their mental assaults rebounding from a wall of sheer conviction. Custodians share blood and genetics of the Emperor, after all, and their loyalty to their primogenitor is unshakable. If the Adeptus Custodes could be said to have a weakness, it is that they fight as individuals rather than squads of soldiers, as proud lions rather than cunning wolves. Each wears armor crafted to his or her particular physique, fights in whatever style they deem most effective, and is given free rein to attack or defend as they see fit. This makes them a terrifyingly effective combatant. A single custode can break a charging horde by themselves, though they may take a few good hits in the process. To outsiders, their supreme self-confidence may seem like arrogance. They pay little heed to mortal men, and even the Adeptus Astartes are kept at spear's length, as every custodian blames them for their former transgression against the Emperor. Yet the reason is a noble one. Every act, thought, and deed of custodian is made for the furtherance of the Emperor's cause, and therefore the survival of the human species. Those who stand in the way of such paragons of surety do not last long. Well, before we take off, what do you think of the men in the golden armor?
I think honestly that is a bigger that's a bigger weakness than a lot of people give credit to. The fact that they fight as individuals instead of soldiers. So we've talked about this a few times, but we haven't done it on the podcast. But there's a reason why over the centuries soldiers win and warriors lose. Warriors are normally a combatant that is very good at killing people, and they're very good at it. The difference, though, is that there is strength and uniformity and working together. So
For soldiers, yeah.
Right. And quite frankly, anyways, that's what makes the Space Marines so terrifying is that not only are they great soldiers, but every single one of them also, anyways, has the gifts, anyways, of being a warrior. So they still, anyways, so a lot of people, anyways, so if you break them down, anyways, to which one's which, anyways, soldiers, like I said, anyways, they fight in unity, they fight as a cohesive unit. So let's take, for instance, my favorite example of this is the Roman legionnaires versus the barbarian tribes of the Gauls or the Germanic tribes or even the Celts. So when you look at them, anyways, fighting the barbarians and the Celts, they never really actually banded together to form a cohesive unit. And their guys, anyways, yes, they were significantly larger than the Romans. And they were bigger, they were faster, but they didn't fight as one. You had a couple of guys, normally it was just kind of a mob rush, and then you had a couple of guys that were like really good, and they had the finest armor and the best weapons because they were that good anyways at fighting other people. The problem is that, yeah, they'd take down a few legionaries, but the legionaries would win because
another good example is how berserkers were very effective until it came to the point where all of a sudden they'd be met with 5 or 6 soldiers that just don't move. It's like, yeah, he'll take down maybe a couple of them, but because they have that solid line, he isn't gonna win.
It's that aspect of, as the barbarian comes rushing at the door, it's like, you may be able to beat me because I'm this small little Italian dude, but can you beat me and then Steve and Frank and Joe and Bill and Ted, who are all anyways sitting anyways in this box with these giant shields, and we're all protecting each other, and we're all waiting for you to open up anyways somewhere anyways where we can stab you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why, by the way, those barbarian tribes, as the years went on, became more unified, became more soldier-like. Until you get to, like, for instance, the Vikings, when they actually had to fight someone. Normally they raided, but when they had to fight somebody anyways, they normally formed a shield wall. There's a reason for that. So, I mean, this whole the Custodes anyways, the way that they fight anyways is very, to me anyways, very Hollywoodized, if that makes sense. It's the aspect of one man against an army, kind of thing, which just, in all reality, just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. I mean, quite frankly, the Custodes, to me anyways, should work very well against, like, for instance, we've seen it time and time again anyways, orcs. Why? Because orcs run the same way. They're not solidified. They're not unified soldiers. They don't march up to you anyways. They charge.
Right.
And then you cut down the biggest orc and the other ones run away. I mean, that's kind of, that's always been the downside anyways for orcs.
Yeah, that also just turn around and start trying to attack you anyways.
Or they end up killing each other. Normally anyways, I mean, that's when you see orcs run, it's because their leaders have been killed. I mean, you cut the head from the snake anyways, that's when they take off. I mean, we see that all the time. Or
they fight each other to try claim
to see who anyways is going to be the next person in charge. So yeah, but it's normally anyways, if you can take out their leaders, the orc nation will fall. That's just the way that they work, which works perfectly for the Custodes. But if you've got them going up against, like, for instance, if you had like a whole, like, army of Chaos Space Marines, like Iron Warriors, I mean, you're going to have a significantly more difficult time dealing with them because they are unified the way that they fight. And not as much as they used to be. I mean, one of the things that makes them probably even more dominant in the 41st millennium is the fact that most of the things that are trying to attack humanity don't really fight as very cohesively. There are very few, like, legions of warriors out there that fight like a consistent army does.
Yeah.
They all are, at the very most anyways, at the very least anyways, like tactical squads. So, and even tactical squads anyways, if you have a whole tactical squad against one guy, normally the tactical squad that is working cohesively together is going to beat the one guy.
Right.
It's just the way it works. It's when that one guy anyways can split off or break that unit apart. That is the only way that an Adeptus Custode can win anyways against a unified soldiery unit, is he has to be able to anyways break that unit apart. Now, like we just described anyways, with the orcs, you kill the leader. With like, for instance, if he was going up against a Death Watch tactical squad, good luck. I don't know how you break that apart. I mean, the only way that I could think of them doing that anyways is just trying to kill one at a time and then disappearing, which the Custodes aren't really known for their sneaky tactics.
Being all in
bright gold,
being 8 feet tall.
So that aspect anyways of them anyway, to me anyways, I would find them far more dangerous is if they had that ability anyways, like the Space Marines do anyways, where they can break off and be very warrior-like, but at the same time, if they need to close ranks, they do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like they do that from what you were saying. It sounds like it's very much anyways, every man for himself. They do not fight in a cohesive unit.
Right.
Which will get you killed.
Just like probably, what was it?
That's why there's less than
2,000
10,000.
plus of them fell.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that eventually you're going to come across a bigger warrior,
Yeah.
like a bloodthirster. I mean, and if I bet, anyways, just taking that into effect, 8 bloodthirsters, if they had formed into a cohesive unit and fought together as one, 2,000 guys should be able to just rock 8 bloodthirsters.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how big they are; they will fall.
Yeah. Well,
with that concept of unity, but
technically,
if you're going to go at them one at a time, it just ain't going to work.
yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, I guess the propaganda kind of falls with the whole charging horde thing, since no, one guy didn't stop a charging horde of coordinate followers.
Yeah.
But
Well, okay, those were also demons, if I recall right. So, I mean, it's a little different animal,
right?
Just
If it's a horde
chaos
of lemmings,
cultists.
then yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, chaos cultists is like they have the same problem that orcs do, and well, they're even less because orcs are significantly stronger than human cultists. I mean, the cultists, anyways, they're just you're talking about fighting a militia, pretty much. It's not going to work. Like I said, anyways, it's they will run into a problem when they're fighting something that is either bigger than them, or it's a solid unified unit.
Right.
A cohesive unit. But
Or
okay, now mind you,
too
anyways,
far away.
I've been very been very critical, anyways, of the Custodes here, and that's just simply, anyways, because 9 times out of 10, when people talk to me about the Custodes, it's just like they are like the immortals. They are these immortal demigods, and they really aren't. I mean, but then again, at the same time, I do think, anyways, they are the best that humanity has soldier-wise. If you put one of them, anyways, in a ring with anybody else, they're gonna kick the crap out of them, including, anyways, Grey Knights, in my opinion. If you've got a one-on-one with a Grey Knight and a Custode, the Custode is going to win. Now, mind you, anyways, we just did a poll on this, anyways, and it was who wins in a 3 versus 3 fight, and Grey Seers, I think, anyways, have a better luck, anyways, on that because there's 3 of them, and like we just said, anyways, the Custodes do not fight together.
And if they
Grey Knights do.
Yeah, if they were to try to fight together, they wouldn't have as good of a flow, so to speak, because they wouldn't have been exactly trained in that method.
Yeah, like you were just saying, that is their biggest weakness, anyways. They do not fight.
Well, that plus also Grey Knights are psychers. So
well, and that was another thing I was going to mention is that, and we're not talking about it this time because it turns out, anyways, there was just so much information about them that we were going to do a whole month on them at some point. But the Sisters of Silence, there's a reason why they are set up with the Custodes. It's like I said before, anyways. It's Ajax Minor and Ajax Major, pretty much. And when they're together, they're a great cohesive fighting unit.
Yeah.
But to pull them apart, anyways, they both kind of crumble. But like I said, anyways, the Custodes are, like I said, they are the greatest warriors that the Imperium has. There aren't many of them. Like we said, anyways, there's only been, anyways, recorded at the most 10,000 of them.
Right.
So, but I mean, they're so good, anyways, that when a group of Custodes is sent to a place, anyways, to complete a mission, before they even get there, the scholars in the Imperium write that it was a success because they sent the Custodes. Yeah. That's how much faith the Imperium has in the Custodes, and it's granted. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're significantly mighty. The only other issue that I could see with them is the
ego.
No, it's the aspect that it's the same problem that I have with the Space Marines. Is the aspect that their brain has been tinkered with so much that they've lost quite a bit of their humanity. Now, a lot of people don't see that as a problem, especially it's like, well, then good. They're just the greatest war machine. It's like, but if you lose your humanity, then therefore, anyways, then I think, anyways, that humanity leads an aspect to warfare that makes them, anyways, better than a lot of other Xenos armies or even Chaos.
That's why generally we prefer like the Space Wolves, the Salamanders, and other groups like that because they seem to have still more of a humanity to them or mentality thought process than other
Or understanding
units.
the picture of it, anyways, the Imperium is nothing without its people.
Right.
And the Custodes have been their brain has been tinkered with even more than the Space Marines have. So
Yeah.
to me, anyways, that's kind of a concern. It does mean, anyways, though, that they'll pretty much never betray the Emperor.
Right.
So I mean, you have the ultimate loyalty there too. But I mean, we'll continue talking about them, and they are, like I said, every account that you're going to find, anyways, the majority of them are going to be victories because they're just that good.
We just happened to start this Fox with one that really wasn't a victory.
Yeah, just to try to bring them down to earth a little bit here. But unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Join us next time as we discuss some of the more notable Custodes.
Dibs on Trajan and Valoris.
Okay, that's fine, but I'm talking about the boss, Constantine Valdor.
Well, prior boss.
No. He is the boss. He's like Bruce Springsteen. He is the boss.
Fair enough. But for those of you who enjoyed our little show, could you please be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button? If you wish to help us expand our work on 40K lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program, our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka. Right now we have 4, but we could use more.
Hey, that rhymes.
Oh, and don't forget to purchase the Yoden Heist.
Yes.
Sold wherever ebooks are sold.
Yes. But most importantly, have a great day. And until next time, this is Ektar
And Euxin.
signing off.
Well, your brothers in arms now, on your shoulders you pull. All humanity forward till your time is paid in full. Where humanity's finest, young Imperium son. Show them all where the line is now until the day is won. Hold your head up now, soldier, till your role's fulfilled. Keep our enemy back no matter how much blood is spilled.